Hello friends! In a previous video we talked all about how to ensure your gun is unloaded, because as a new gun owner that may be something you're somewhat concerned with at first. But eventually there will come that fateful day when you finally get the chance to put some rounds through your new gun for the first time. And we want to make sure that you're able to load the gun and ensure it is loaded properly. Believe it or not, improper loading procedures are the #1 source, and I actually don't have a stat to back that up, but I can tell you it's the #1 source in classes here at Vortex Edge for malfunctions and issues that occur when shooting, really any type of gun. So if you can ensure that you've loaded the gun properly, you've already put yourself so far ahead of the game, and you're so much less likely to encounter issues when shooting. And nobody likes malfunctions. So in order to do that, I have my handy dandy dummy rounds here, and using dummy rounds is actually quite smart despite the name. Get it? So these are characterized by the orange bullet and lack of a primer at the back of the case. So they're not live rounds, they can't go off, which is going to be nice because I'm in this nice studio and I don't want to accidentally shoot anything. Of course, I'll be following all the safety rules, you get it. But we're gonna use that for our demonstration purposes. Loading the magazine is the first step and very important. The magazine is absolutely a part of your gun's firing and operating system, so it should be in good order. I've ensured that I have a Smith & Wesson magazine made by Smith & Wesson. It's not aftermarket or anything, and it is intended to go with my Smith & Wesson handgun. It's also brand new, so I know that it's in good order. It's not all used and starting to get a little bit run down, so I shouldn't have any reliability issues there. When you hold the magazine with the bottom parallel to the ground or the table in this case, most all handguns out there are going to have the magazine have some form of forward lean to it. And that forward lean should be going toward the end of the barrel. So naturally, since we want our bullets to be leaving the end of the barrel when we shoot, we should orient the bullet in the magazine as such so that bullet is facing along with that forward lean. So we're gonna go ahead and load up our first round here. With most pistol magazines, you're going to have to press down on the magazine's follower. That's this gray part here. It's not always gonna be gray. Sometimes it may be orange, black, just any color, but you're gonna press down on the follower, and we're gonna have to slide the bullet back into place. With some rifle magazines, you can just stuff the bullet right down in the magazine straight, but in this case, it does require a bit of a two-part maneuver. So I'm gonna press that follower down with the rear of the bullet, and then once I finally got it underneath the feed lips of my magazine, then I'm able to slide it back. So now the bullet is in the proper positioning to be fed through the gun. This magazine can hold 17 rounds, so I'm free to load up 17 rounds in the magazine. And all I have to do to keep loading in more rounds is basically just keep pressing down the previous round that I just loaded, and then same deal. I'm gonna start towards the front. I'm going to get underneath these feed lips, and then I can press the round all the way to the rear and just keep going. The reason I mentioned the 17 round thing is because there's a spring in here and there's a follower on top, and there's a little bit of play in there. And in some magazines, maybe even rifle magazines at times, you may be able to actually squeeze 18 rounds or one more round than it's actually intended to hold. And if you do that, then you may actually encounter a malfunction pretty early on with your first round, or the magazine may just be really, really hard to load into the gun. And then you might be thinking, well, what's the problem here? And it's just because you accidentally loaded one more round than the magazine is intended to hold. Counting is hard. So all you have to do at this point is really just keep loading up rounds until you've achieved the magazine's maximum capacity. Pretty straightforward. Do be aware of the fact that because you are loading against a spring in the magazine, the more compressed it gets as you put more rounds in, the harder and harder it will get to put another round in the magazine. So for that reason, a lot of manufacturers either give you with your brand new gun and the couple magazines you get with the gun, or they'll offer as an aftermarket accessory a loading assisting device, otherwise known as a LAD. Just kidding, no one knows them as that. Only I just made that up. Some people will call them a speed loader. They go by many different names. This is a Glock magazine, and this is the device that you get in the box with a brand new Glock and the couple of magazines that they provide. All it does is push down the follower or the top round for you so that you can squeeze in a new round right underneath the feed lips. You release the LAD, and then you just push the round to the rear. so the round is set in place. Now, when I want to put in the next round, I push down again. It makes the space for me. Slide that round in there, I let off, and then I slide it to the rear. So it just allows you to do that process without marring up your fingers, or, you know, it can get a little bit difficult at times. If you do lose count while loading rounds into your magazine, it's okay, because like we said, counting is hard. If you lose count though, most of these magazines will have little holes either on the side or in the Glock's case, on the rear. And you can peek through there and see if you're seeing brass, or in the case of our dummy rounds here, they have this nice silver case of the ammo. And whatever is the highest number that you can see the brass through, then that's about how many rounds you have in the magazine. In this case, I can see that the hole that has the number 13 underneath it is the highest number that I can see brass through. So I have about 13 rounds in this magazine. I can keep going. Back to loading Smith & Wesson magazines. I'm not gonna confuse this Glock magazine here and put it in my Smith & Wesson. We're gonna get this topped off completely and then talk about putting the magazine and your first round into the gun.
A few moments later.
I've got 17 rounds in this magazine and I'm gonna load it into my pistol.
Here we go.
All right, so first things first, when it comes to loading up your handgun, the easiest way to load a handgun is when the slide is locked to the rear. We talked all about this in our episode where we were ensuring a gun is unloaded, but basically all we're going to do is apply upward pressure to our slide lock lever while pushing the slide to the rear. So to show you guys that, you can see where that slide lock lever jumped up into place into the notch on the slide, and now when I remove my hands, the slide is locked to the rear. The reason that is the easiest way to do it is because now when we insert our magazine in the correct orientation with the bullets facing towards the end of the barrel, when we insert our magazine, there's nothing to press back against that spring tension again on our top round. It can just insert freely right into the gun and lock into place. Now to show you an example of what it would look like if I didn't have the slide lock to the rear, do be aware, it does still work. I can still load the magazine. It's just that now you can see I'm kind of encountering that resistance there. And that would require me to really hit the magazine home. So that's another component where you'd have to be conscientious of the fact that you really want to seat that magazine. So seating a magazine is very important to the reliability of your firearm. Let's talk about that.
Let's talk about that.
The magazine's job as part of the operating system of your firearm is to supply a round at the right time and right place in order for the operating system to function properly, chamber a round, and allow you to shoot that round when you pull the trigger. It can only do so when it's seated fully. That really takes care of that part, like I said, where it's at the right place. Now, right here, you can see that this magazine is in the mag well, and in fact, it's actually not coming out. It's in there pretty sturdy. However, it has not been fully seated. The difference between that and fully seated is this click you'll hear. Right there, that's the magazine release engaging as the magazine goes up into its fully seated position. If you don't hear that click, or if you want to just make sure anytime you're firing a gun, always give the magazine an extra little tap on the bottom to ensure it's been fully seated. That is very, very critical. Or else your first round or the first time you go to try and rack the gun, you're probably then going to see the magazine drop out, hit the ground, and you're going to be really embarrassed and it's going to stink. Right, now that we have a properly filled magazine and we have completely seated it into the firearm, we're ready to rack the slide by manually pulling it to the rear and then letting it go into what we call battery, where the system as a whole is ready to fire. That's one way we can do it, so that would be simply pull the slide to the rear, let it go. Easy peasy.
Easy peasy.
The other thing that we can do is the thing that I mentioned at first is by locking the slide to the rear, we just simply put the magazine in place, it's locked in place, and then just press down on the slide release. We could also slightly pull back on the slide a little bit and we let it go into battery. Boom, easy peasy.
Everybody's happy, easy peasy.
Now we mentioned back in our video about the 4 firearm safety rules that we feel it's very important you always know the status of your firearm. At this point, I've gone through all the proper procedures to get a round into the chamber and have the gun be ready to fire, but am I absolutely 100% certain the round went into the chamber and the gun is ready to shoot? If I'm being honest, I can't say yes to that question, so I'm gonna do what's called a press check. Now, press check is a great way to really ensure 100% that there is a round in the chamber. All I need to do is bring my support hand up, grab the slide and just pull the slide back ever so slightly. I don't need to pull it back fully or else I'll eject this round and pick up a new one. I'm gonna pull it back ever so slightly. I'm gonna go inverted, as the folks in Top Gun would say on you here. But you can see behind this is the rear part of the barrel where the chamber is, and then in front of this portion of the slide where we have what's called our ejector that would eject a spent piece of brass out of the gun. In between those two things, I can see this shiny silver from my dummy rounds. If I were shooting brass-cased ammo, I'd see shiny gold there. That is my direct implication that there is indeed 100% for certain a round in the chamber. Last but not least, there's one more step. Because I've slightly pulled back on the slide here a little bit, most of the time the slide will go right back into battery. But in this case, it didn't. It looks like it did, but if we look more closely here towards the rear part of the grip on what's called the tang of the grip, you can actually see where the rear part of the slide is hanging out just slightly. If I went to go pull the trigger with the slide in this condition, nothing would happen. I'd get a dead trigger and the gun would not go off, which isn't good. You don't want to be wondering why the gun isn't going off when you think everything is ready to go. No, in this case, I would need to give it a tap at the rear to fully seat that slide and make sure that the gun is in battery and ready to go. So we always finish our load procedure after our press check. We always finish with a tap at the rear of the slide just to ensure that everything is ready to go.
So happy for you.
Happy for us!
One thing I want to mention here is treat your firearm like a tool. It was designed to be used like a tool. In other words, don't baby it. See, what we see a lot of people do from time to time, and I'm going to unload this round here that I just previously loaded into the chamber. We see people do is, they're thinking I spent a lot of money on this gun, I spent a lot of money maybe on the ammo, I'm not really fully certain, so I want to make sure I don't mess anything up. So they, maybe lightly put the magazine in and, maybe the magazine doesn't seat fully, give that thing a nice slam home. You're not gonna break anything. The other thing that we'll see people do is, now say I wanna wrap the slide to get around in the chamber. Well, they kind of nervously pull back on the slide of the gun and oh yeah, there it is. Okay, I'm gonna just ease it forward. Well now, because I just eased it forward, see the condition of the slide? Once again, it's not in battery. Of course, I could overcome that with my tap at the rear of the slide and everything's good, but really this gun was meant to be handled in such a way that it let the spring pressure that is applied here in the operating rod and all this other stuff on the guts, really it wants to work the way it was designed to be worked, so don't get in its way. So that's the process when sort of gobbledygooked up with all of Jimmy's talking. Let's just show the process without any explanation. Magazine, load it up completely, seated fully into gun, racked, press check. Indeed, I see a round in the chamber, hit the rear of the slide, ready to go. So there's the loading procedure for a pistol. Simple process, but if done incorrectly, can result in an unreliable and malfunctioning setup, and nobody wants that. If you guys have any questions about the process that I just went through, definitely let us know in the comments. We want this to be a zero assumptions series of videos, and we can't do that if you guys aren't asking questions. Because I try my best to keep this just solely set up for those who are new to guns, but I'm not perfect. You can help keep me honest. Thank you guys for watching this video. We'll see you on the next one. Bye. Slide the bullet in. Usually it's easier than that, but I'm on camera, so I'm nervous. And then you would put in your next round. You'd